All right, welcome back. So today's video is from a request from Rodney regarding effort and intensity and what it means in relation to the gym and working out. So it's a good topic to discuss, actually. So effort and intensity is something that, um, given its subjectivity, can be quite difficult for people to really understand. And so when your version of absolute max effort may be very different from my version or someone else's version. And this comes to a number of factors, and especially if you're someone who isn't used to exercising versus someone who's been doing it for a very long time. The idea of how much effort and intensity you're putting out uh, can be very different. And when we consider exercise, like a lot of the new methodologies of exercise that have come out in recent decades, or especially the last decade, things like high intensity interval training, for example, and they'll talk about intervals where you might do, say, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, something like that. And they'll say that when you're on that 30 seconds on, it has to be like a maximum effort. And what a lot of people interpret maximum effort for, and what they actually put out, is nowhere near their maximum effort. And so they'll say, well, I did a 20-minute high intensity interval session this morning, but their intensity in that session was not 100%. It was maybe 70% or 80%. And in order for that methodology to work as advertised, you really need to be pushing to that 100%. And this is why I find that, especially for older people or people who haven't done exercise for a longer period of time, the idea of really high intensity exercise is actually not always the best idea. And I would actually say for someone starting out, it's rarely a good idea, mainly because you can't safely push your body to that limit without feeling like absolute shit, and also hurting yourself, having some sort of injury. If you were just someone who hasn't run for 20 years and then you go out and do absolute max level sprints, there's a reasonable chance you're going to hurt something as a result of doing that. And so, this idea of intensity, there's a reasonable correlation between the level of intensity that you're doing a workout at and then the amount of working out you need to do to get an outcome. And it's not exactly this way because the different intensity levels have different outcomes specifically. But in order to get the same benefit, say, of doing 20 minutes of really, really high, near maximum level intensity, at half of your capacity, you might have to do 5 hours of exercise to sort of make up and get the same potential fitness gain as a result. But when we look at working out, it is probably one of the greatest things that people don't do. They might turn up, they might put a little bit of time into something, but the intensity and energy they bring to the exercise itself is not sufficient enough, and not sufficient enough to get the result that they're looking for. And now when you're starting out, when you're newer to exercise, the level of intensity that you need to progress is quite small. Doing any sort of exercise at any intensity, the more unfit you are, the more likely that that the outcome is pretty much going to happen regardless. If you do anything when you're sedentary for years, it's going to result in good progress. But it's going to get to a point where that intensity needs to increase, and the output that you put into those workouts gets harder and harder the fitter you become, and the gain that you get from it gets to a certain point where it becomes harder and harder and harder to achieve a lot from those workouts. And that's why that intensity needs to be pushed. But understanding your intensity, understanding what different types of effort are without some reference point, can be quite difficult. And so that's why things like heart rate, or having an objective measure of how many repetitions you did at a certain weight and so on, can be helpful for you to at least gauge and have some objective opinion as to the effort level that you're putting in, because it's very easy to delude ourselves into thinking that we're working out hard when we're really not putting in that much effort. You know, if your heart rate's at 140 and you tell me that you're doing a maximum exertion exercise for cardio or something, then objectively you're not. You may feel uncomfortable, but if your heart rate's 130, 140, there's a very good chance that you're not working all that hard. So when it comes to effort, when it comes to intensity, we want to understand, how we feel at different intensities, but also understand that if we're not able or willing to work out at those really high intensities, then we need to at least make sure we're doing a reasonable volume to make up for it. That we're at least spending 20 or 30. If we're not willing to spend 20 or 30 minutes doing super high intensity exercise, then maybe we need to spend an hour and a half doing a slightly lower intensity exercise to get the same outcome that we're looking for. But overall, I would say most people probably aren't pushing anywhere near as hard as they can. And even when they're at their lower end of effort and intensity, they're not pushing as hard as they can. And if you want to get results, and if you want to get outcomes that the majority of people don't have, then you're going to have to push hard. You're going to have to up that intensity, and it's going to hurt. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but that's what forces your body to adapt. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope that's been informative. If you have any other questions or want to understand more about these topics, please feel free to drop me a message or leave a comment below, and I can make another video.